much for coming for the Latino celebration this year. We are delighted to have Dr. Patricia Fernandez-Kelly. She has a PhD in cultural anthropology, and she teaches at the Department of Sociology, and is also associated with the Office of Population Development at Princeton University. Dr. Fernandez-Kelly has written on many areas. Some of the areas are economic development, immigration, and the global economy, women in the labor force, and also Latinos incarcerated in U.S. prisons. Welcome, and delighted. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Elizondo. I first would like to thank Professor Juan Orbe and Ms. Edna Spencer. They have been just so wonderful that I'm thinking about moving to this institution. Thank you also, Jonathan Paris. You have a great presentation of self. And I appreciate your hospitality. I'm actually feeling a little lonely from behind the podium. If it were up to me, I think I would move closer in order to connect more directly with you who are here. But I think I'm going to stand here particularly because there are so many people on the side that it's probably better that way. I can't tell you how excited I am to be here. First of all, because I've been treated with enormous amount of consideration by your professors and by Ms. Spencer, but also because this is a breath of fresh air. I have to confess to you that living in Princeton, New Jersey, and being a professor at Princeton University is a wonderful experience, and I am not complaining here, but it lacks a little bit of an element of reality. I mean, at Princeton, I am dealing with students that I basically want to shake away from their bubbles of complacency. Here, I am confronting an audience in which many of you, the students, are actually holding down jobs and at least partially supporting families. And so to me, it's a big treat to be in the real world as opposed to the bubble of privilege that is Princeton. Now, let's not completely dump on my students who are wonderful. That's not my intention. Actually, what I see as a problem is that many of them will actually graduate and go on to occupy positions of privilege and will work in environments in which they will be able to affect the lives of many, many thousands, perhaps even millions of people. Several presidents and congressmen have attended Princeton and other Ivy League institutions, and we know how living in bubbles of privilege may actually prevent you from seeing very obvious things that are happening on the ground. And so my mission there is to tell them about the world of reality, which I know mostly through the research, and to make sure that someday I won't have to wake up when I'm 87 and notice that one of my students went on to make really stupid decisions because he was not or she was not provided with adequate information. Here, my challenge is different. My challenge, and I'll do almost everything, perhaps other than tap dance on the podium, is to provide you with some information about relevant issues of immigration. I really want my presentation to connect with your own concerns and provide you with a working understanding of where we are in the question of immigration in this country. I'm planning to speak for about 35 to 40 minutes. Yeah, bad chance. And no, I will. I'm actually pretty good about that. And then I hope that you will be gracious enough to give meaning to my life by asking questions and by providing me with an opportunity to engage in the dialogue. So the subject of my presentation is, the title, that is to welcome the stranger, myths and reality of illegal immigration. Now, let me ask just for my own information, are you aware of how volatile and divisive the subject of immigration is at this point in the United States? Can I have a show of hands? or is this a new subject for you, about half of you? So then my mission is twofold. One of them is to provide those of you who are already aware of the debate on immigration with additional information based on research. And those of you who are not aware of this, I invite you to become more involved, because it is a major problem for particularly immigrants, as you'll see in a moment. The title of my presentation, To Welcome the Stranger, is suggestive because the United States has had a tradition and a history of inclusion of immigrants. Now, this is a twofold story. On the one hand, we glorify and often romanticize our immigrant past as represented by the Statue of Liberty, thinking fundamentally that people from various parts of the world have come into this country and eventually worked very hard, struggled, suffered often disrespect and exploitation, but have overcome all kinds of obstacles in their route to assimilation. Assimilation is a word that is meant to designate a process by virtue of which existing national differences or cultural differences are gradually erased as people become part of the great American nation. That is one side of the story. But there is another equally glorious but forgotten part of this narrative, and that is that most immigrants have come to this country as workers. Whether they were Irish or Polish or Italian or from Eastern Europe, Jews, etc., they came to this country as bearers of very inexpensive labor. And I try to remind people that migration to this country was originally recruited and continues to be recruited at this time. Those workers, as anyone who knows a little bit about labor history in the United States, which I happen to be passionate about, will know, was a story fraught with conflict. Because after all, the great secret of this country has been that it's both a place in the world where major and fantastic institutions of constitutionality, democracy, public participation, suffrage, etc. have existed, but it is also one of the places in which market capitalism has acquired some of its most competitive and often cruelest dimensions. And so this tale of, on the one hand, high aspirations in terms of participation, political inclusion, and on the other hand, exploitation and disrespect, have existed throughout the history of the nation. And so here, I want to maintain that context in mind as I discuss the situation of immigration at present. And here, I'd like to start by providing you with a vignette. In fact, I'd like to organize my presentation around two vignettes, which are part of my life. I chair an organization called the Latin American Legal Defense and Education Fund, LALDE. Now, you'll have to take my word for it when I tell you that I've been in this country since 1976. And at no point in my life did I ever feel a desire or an interest to join an immigrant organization. And the reason is obvious. I was privileged to grow up in Mexico City and was exposed to all kinds of fabulous education. I had extraordinary teachers and professors, and when I came to this country for personal reasons, that is, I married an American citizen, it never occurred to me to think of myself as an immigrant. It occurred to me to think of myself as someone who was making a contribution to a society that I was well acquainted with. And so for the remainder of that period, almost in its entirety, I never saw myself as a minority or as an immigrant. Yes, I realized that, institutions of higher learning have this custom in which they associate physical appearance and national origin with minority status.